Good evening, and welcome to Boring Books for Bedtime. I hope tonight's installment provides all the boredom your busy brain needs to quiet down and let you get some sleep for once. So lie back, adjust your volume, take a nice deep breath, and off we go. This evening, we're tipping back into the classics and continuing one of the most popular readings on this podcast to date, Meditations by Marcus Aurelius Antoninus, the Emperor of Rome. Let's pick up where we left off. 14. From the gods I received that I had good grandfathers and parents, a good sister, good masters, good domestics, loving kinsmen, almost all that I have, and that I never through haste and rashness transgressed against any of them, notwithstanding that my disposition was such as that such a thing, if occasion had been, might very well have been committed by me, but that it was the mercy of the gods to prevent such a concurring of matters and occasions as might make me to incur this blame, that I was not long brought up by the concubine of my father, that I preserved the flower of my youth, that I took not upon me to be a man before my time, but rather put it off longer than I needed, that I lived under the government of my lord and father, who would take away from me all pride and vainglory, and reduce me to that conceit and opinion that it was not impossible for a prince to live in the court without a troop of guards and followers, extraordinary apparel, such and such torches and statues, and other like particulars of state and magnificence, but that a man may reduce and contract himself almost to the state of a private man, and yet for all that not to become the more base and remiss in those public matters and affairs, wherein power and authority is requisite, that I have had such a brother, who by his own example might stir me up to think of myself, and by his respect and love delight and please me, that I have got ingenuous children, and that they were not born distorted, nor with any other natural deformity, that I was no great proficient in the study of rhetoric and poetry and of other faculties, which perchance I might have dwelt upon, if I had found myself to go on in them with success, that I did by times prefer those by whom I was brought up to such places and dignities which they seemed unto me most to desire, and that I did not put them off with hope and expectation, that, since that they were yet but young, I would do the same hereafter, that I ever knew Apollonius and Rusticus and Maximus, that I have had occasion often and effectually to consider and meditate with myself concerning that life which is accorded to nature, what the nature and manner of it is, so that as for the gods and such suggestions, helps, and inspirations as might be expected from them, nothing did hinder, but that I might have begun long before to live according to nature, or that even now that I was not yet partaker and in present possession of that life, that I myself, in that I did not observe those inward motions and suggestions, yea, and almost plain and apparent instructions and admonitions of the gods, was the only cause of it, that my body in such a life hath been able to hold out so long, that I never had to do with Benedicta and Theodotus, yea, and afterwards when I fell into some fits of love, I was soon cured, that having been often displeased with Rusticus, I never did him anything for which afterwards I had occasion to repent, that it being so that my mother was to die young, yet she lived with me all her latter years, that as often as I had a purpose to help and succor any that either were poor or fallen into some present necessity, I never was answered by my officers that there was not ready money enough to do it, and that I myself never had occasion to require the like succor from any other. That I have such a wife, so obedient, so loving, so ingenuous, that I had choice of fit and able men to whom I might commit the bringing up of my children, that by dreams I have received help, as for other things, so in particular how I might stay my casting of blood, and cure my dizziness, as that also that happened to thee in Cajeta, as unto Croesus when he prayed by the seashore. And when I did first apply myself to philosophy, that I did not fall into the hands of some sophists, or spent my time either in reading the manifold volumes of ordinary philosophers, nor in practicing myself in the solution of arguments and fallacies, nor dwelt upon the studies of the meteors and other natural curiosities. All these things, without the assistance of the gods and fortune, could not have been. 15. In the country of the Quadi at Granua, these. Betimes in the morning say to thyself, this day I shalt have to do with an idle curious man, with an unthankful man, a railer, a crafty, false, or an envious man, an unsociable, uncharitable man. All these ill qualities have happened unto them, through ignorance of that which is truly good and truly bad. But I that understand the nature of that which is good, that it only is to be desired, and of that which is bad, that it only is truly odious and shameful, who know moreover that this transgressor, whosoever he be, is my kinsman, not by the same blood and seed, but by participation of the same reason, and of the same divine particle. How can I either be hurt by any of those, since it is not in their power to make me incur anything that is truly reproachful, or angry and ill affected towards him, who by nature is so near unto me? For we are all born to be fellow workers, as the feet, the hands, and the eyelids, as the rows of the upper and under teeth. For such therefore to be in opposition is against nature. And what is it to chafe at and to be averse from, but to be in opposition? 16. Whatsoever I am is either flesh or life, or that which we commonly call the mistress and overruling part of man, reason. Away with thy books. Suffer not thy mind any more to be distracted and carried to and fro, for it will not be, but is even now ready to die. Think little of thy flesh, blood, bones, and a skin, a pretty piece of knit and twisted work, consisting of nerves, veins, and arteries. Think no more of it than so. And as for thy life, consider what it is, a wind, not one constant wind neither, but every moment of an hour let out and sucked in again. The third is thy ruling part, and here consider, thou art an old man. Suffer not that excellent part to be brought in subjection and to become slavish. Suffer it not to be drawn up and down with unreasonable and unsociable lusts and motions, as it were with wires and nerves. Suffer it not any more, either to repine at anything now present, or to fear and fly anything to come, which the destiny hath appointed thee. 17. Whatsoever proceeds from the gods immediately, that any man will grant totally depends from their divine providence. As for those things that are commonly said to happen by fortune, even those must be conceived to have dependence from nature, or from the first and general connection and concatenation of all those things which more apparently by the divine providence are administered and brought to pass. All things flow from thence, and whatsoever it is that is both necessary and conducing to the whole, part of which thou art, and whatsoever it is that is requisite and necessary for the preservation of the general, must of necessity for every particular nature be good and behooveful. And as for the whole, it is preserved, as by the perpetual mutation and conversion of the simple elements one into another, so also by the mutation and alteration of things mixed and compounded. Let these things suffice thee. Let them be always unto thee as thy general rules and precepts. As for thy thirst after books, away with it with all speed, that thou die not murmuring and complaining, but truly meek and well satisfied, and from thy heart thankful unto the gods. The second book. 1. Remember how long thou hast already put off these things, and how often a certain day and hour, as it were, having been set unto thee by the gods, thou hast neglected it. It is high time for thee to understand the true nature both of the world whereof thou art a part, and of that Lord and Governor of the world, from whom, as a channel from the spring, thou thyself didst flow, and that there is but a certain limit of time appointed unto thee, which if thou shalt not make use of to calm and allay the many distempers of thy soul, it will pass away, and thou with it, and never after return. 2. Let it be thy earnest and incessant care as a Roman and a man, to perform whatsoever it is that thou art about, with true and unfeigned gravity, natural affection, freedom, and justice. And as for all other cares and imaginations, how thou mayest ease thy mind of them, which thou shalt do, if thou shalt go about every action as thy last action, free from all vanity, all passionate and wilful aberration from reason, and from all hypocrisy and self-love, and dislike of those things which by the fates or appointment of God have happened unto thee. Thou seest that those things which for a man to hold on in a prosperous course and to live a divine life are requisite and necessary are not many, for the gods will require no more of any man that shall but keep and observe these things. 3. Do, soul, do. Abuse and condemn thyself. Yet a while and the time for thee to respect thyself will be at an end. Every man's happiness depends from himself. But behold, thy life is almost at an end. Whilst affording thyself no respect, thou dost make thy happiness to consist in the souls and conceits of other men. 4. Why should any of these things that happen externally so much distract thee? Give thyself leisure to learn some good thing, and cease roving and wandering to and fro. Thou must also take heed of another kind of wandering, for they are idle in their actions, who toil and labor in this life, and have no certain scope to which to direct all their motions and desires. 5. For not observing the state of another man's soul, scarce was ever any man known to be unhappy. Tell whosoever they be that intend not, and guide not by reason and discretion the motions of their own souls, they must of necessity be unhappy. 6. These things thou must always have in mind. What is the nature of the universe, and what is mine? In particular, this unto that what relation it hath, what kind of part, of what kind of universe it is, and that there is nobody that can hinder thee, but that thou mayest always both do and speak those things which are agreeable to that nature whereof thou art a part. 7. Theophrastus, when he compares sin with sin, as after a vulgar sense such things I grant may be compared, says well and like a philosopher, that those sins are greater which are committed through lust than those which are committed through anger. For he that is angry seems with a kind of grief and close contraction of himself to turn away from reason. But he that sins through lust, being overcome by pleasure, doth in his very sin belie a more impotent and unmanlike disposition. Well then, and like a philosopher doth he say, that he of the two is the more to be condemned that sins with pleasure than he that sins with grief. For indeed this latter may seem first to have been wronged, and so in some manner through grief thereof to have been forced to be angry, whereas he who through lust doth commit anything, did of himself merely resolve upon that action. 8. Whatsoever thou dost affect, whatsoever thou dost project, so do, and so project all, as one who, for aught thou knowest, may at this very present depart out of this life. And as for death, if there be any gods, it is no grievous thing to leave the society of men. The gods will do thee no hurt, thou mayest be sure. But if it be so that there be no gods, or that they take no care of the world, why should I desire to live in a world void of gods and of all divine providence? But gods there be certainly, and they take care for the world. And as for those things which be truly evil, as vice and wickedness, such things they have put in a man's own power, that he might avoid them if he would. And had there been anything besides that had been truly bad and evil, they would have had a care of that also, that a man might have avoided it. But why should that be thought to hurt and prejudice a man's life in this world, which cannot anyways make man himself the better or the worse in his own person? Neither must we think that the nature of the universe did either through ignorance pass these things, or if not as ignorant of them, yet as unable either to prevent or better to order and dispose them. It cannot be that she through want either of power or skill should have committed such a thing, so as to suffer all things both good and bad equally and promiscuously to happen unto all both good and bad. As for life therefore and death, honor and dishonor, labor and pleasure, riches and poverty, all these things happen unto men indeed, both good and bad equally, but as things which of themselves are neither good nor bad, because of themselves neither shameful nor praiseworthy. 9. Consider how quickly all things are dissolved and resolved, the bodies and substances themselves into the matter and substance of the world, and their memories into the general age and time of the world. Consider the nature of all worldly sensible things, of those especially which either ensnare by pleasure, or for their irksomeness are dreadful, or for their outward luster and show are in great esteem and request. How vile and contemptible, how base and corruptible, how destitute of all true life and being they are. 10. It is the part of a man endowed with a good understanding faculty to consider what they themselves are in very deed, from whose bare conceits and voices honor and credit do proceed, as also what it is to die, And how if a man shall consider this by itself alone, to die and separate from it in his mind all those things which with it usually represent themselves unto us, he can conceive of it no otherwise than as of a work of nature. And he that fears any work of nature is a very child. Now death, it is not only a work of nature, but also conducing to nature. 11. Consider with thyself how man and by what part of his is joined unto God, and how that part of man is affected when it is said to be diffused. There is nothing more wretched than that soul which in a kind of circuit compasseth all things, searching, as he saith, even the very depths of the earth, and by all signs and conjectures prying into the very thoughts of other men's souls, and yet of this is not sensible that it is sufficient for a man to apply himself wholly, and to confine all his thoughts and cares to the tendance of that spirit which is within him, and truly and really to serve him. His service doth consist in this, that a man keep himself pure from all violent passion and evil affection, from all rashness and vanity, and from all manner of discontent, either in regard of the gods or men. For indeed whatsoever proceeds from the gods deserves respect for their worth and excellency, and whatsoever proceeds from men, as they are our kinsmen, should by us be entertained with love always, sometimes as proceeding from their ignorance of that which is truly good and bad, a blindness no less than that by which we are not able to discern between white and black, with a kind of pity and compassion also. 12. If thou shouldst live 3,000 or as many as 10,000 of years, yet remember this, that man can part with no life properly, save with that little part of life which he now lives, and that which he lives is no other than that which at every instant he parts with, that then which is longest of duration, and that which is shortest, come both to one effect. For although in regard of that which is already past there may be some inequality, yet that time which is now present and in being is equal unto all men, and that being it which we part with whensoever we die, it doth manifestly appear that it can be but a moment of time that we then part with. For as for that which is either past or to come, a man cannot be said properly to part with it. For how should a man part with that which he hath not? These two things therefore thou must remember. First, that all things in the world from all eternity, by a perpetual revolution of the same times, and things ever continued and renewed, are of one kind and nature, so that whether for 100 or 200 years only, or for an infinite space of time, a man see those things which are still the same, it can be no matter of great moment. And secondly, that life which any the longest liver or the shortest liver parts with is for length and duration the very same, for that only which is present is that which either of them can lose, as being that only which they have. For that which he hath not, no man can truly be said to lose. 13. Remember that all is but opinion and conceit, for those things are plain and apparent which were spoken unto Monimus the Cynic, and as plain and apparent is the use that may be made of those things, if that which is true and serious in them be received as well as that which is sweet and pleasing. 14. A man's soul doth wrong and disrespect itself first and especially, when as much as in itself lies it becomes an aposteme, and as it were an excrescency of the world, for to be grieved and displeased with anything that happens in the world is direct apostasy from the nature of the universe, part of which all particular natures of the world are. Secondly, when she either is averse from any man, or led by contrary desires or affections tending to his hurt and prejudice, such as are the souls of them that are angry. Thirdly, when she is overcome by any pleasure or pain. Fourthly, when she doth dissemble, and covertly and falsely either doth or saith anything. Fifthly, when she doth either affect or endeavor anything to no certain end, but rashly and without due consideration how consequent or inconsequent it is to the common end. For even the least things ought not to be done without relation unto the end, and the end of the reasonable creatures is to follow and obey him who is the reason, as it were, and the law of this great city and ancient commonwealth. 15. The time of a man's life is as a point, the substance of it ever flowing, the sense obscure, and the whole composition of the body tending to corruption. His soul is restless, fortune uncertain, and fame doubtful. To be brief, as a stream, so are all things belonging to the body. As a dream or as a smoke, so are all that belong unto the soul. Our life is a warfare and a mere pilgrimage. Fame after life is no better than oblivion. What is it then that will adhere and follow? Only one thing, philosophy. And philosophy doth consist in this: for a man to preserve that spirit which is within him from all manner of contumelies and injuries, and above all pains or pleasures, never to do anything either rashly or feignedly or hypocritically, wholly to depend from himself and on his own proper actions. All things that happen unto him to embrace contentedly as coming from him from whom he himself also came, and above all things, with all meekness and a calm cheerfulness, to expect death as being nothing else but the resolution of those elements of which every creature is composed. And if the elements themselves suffer nothing by this, their perpetual conversion of one into another, that dissolution and alteration which is so common unto all, why should it be feared by any? Is not this according to nature? But nothing that is according to nature can be evil, whilst I was at Carnuntium. The third book. 1. A man must not only consider how daily his life wasteth and decreaseth, but this also, that if he live long, he cannot be certain whether his understanding shall continue so able and sufficient for either discreet consideration in matter of businesses or for contemplation, it being the thing whereon true knowledge of things both divine and human doth depend. For if once he shall begin to dote, his respiration, nutrition, his imaginative and appetitive and other natural faculties may still continue the same. He shall find no want of them. But how to make that right use of himself that he should, how to observe exactly in all things that which is right and just, how to redress and rectify all wrong, or sudden apprehensions and imaginations, and even of this particular, whether he should live any longer or no, to consider duly. For all such things, wherein the best strength and vigor of the mind is most requisite, his power and ability will be past and gone. Thou must hasten, therefore, not only because thou art every day nearer unto death than other, but also because that intellective faculty in thee, whereby thou art enabled to know the true nature of things, and to order all thy actions by that knowledge, doth daily waste and decay, or may fail thee before thou die. 2. This also thou must observe, that whatsoever it is that naturally doth happen to things natural hath somewhat in itself that is pleasing and delightful. As a great loaf, when it is baked, some parts of it cleave, as it were, and part asunder, and make the crust of it rugged and unequal. And yet those parts of it, though in some sort it be against the art and intention of baking itself, that they are thus cleft and parted, which should have been and were first made all even and uniform, they become it well nevertheless, and have a certain peculiar property to stir the appetite. So figs are accounted fairest and ripest then, when they begin to shrink and wither, as it were. So ripe olives, when they are next to putrefaction, then are they in their proper beauty. The hanging down of grapes, the brow of a lion, the froth of a foaming wild boar, and many other like things, though by themselves considered they are far from any beauty, yet because they happen naturally, they both are comely and delightful, so that if a man shall with a profound mind and apprehension consider all things in the world, even among all those things which are but mere accessories and natural appendices, as it were, there will scarce appear anything unto him wherein he will not find matter of pleasure and delight. So will he behold with as much pleasure the true rictus of wild beasts, as those which by skilful painters and other artificers are imitated. So will he be able to perceive the proper ripeness and beauty of old age, whether in man or woman, and whatsoever else it is that is beautiful and alluring in whatsoever is. With chaste and continent eyes he will soon find out and discern. Those and many other things will he discern, not credible unto every one, but unto them only who are truly and familiarly acquainted, both with nature itself and all natural things. 3. Hippocrates, having cured many sicknesses, fell sick himself and died. The Chaldeans and Astrologians, having foretold the deaths of diverse people, were afterwards themselves surprised by the fates. Alexander and Pompeius and Caius Caesar, having destroyed so many towns and cut off in the field so many thousands both of horse and foot, yet they themselves at last were fain to part with their own lives. Heraclitus, having written so many natural tracts concerning the last and general conflagration of the world, died afterwards all filled with water within, and all bedaubed with dirt and dung without. Lice killed Democritus, and Socrates another sort of vermin, wicked ungodly men. How then stands the case? Thou hast taken ship, thou hast sailed, thou art come to land. Go out if to another life, there also shalt thou find gods who are everywhere. If all life and sense shall cease, then shalt thou cease also to be subject to either pains or pleasures, and to serve and tend this vile cottage. So much the viler, by how much that which ministers unto it doth excel, the one being a rational substance and a spirit, the other nothing but earth and blood. 4. Spend not the remnant of thy days in thoughts and fancies concerning other men, when it is not in relation to some common good, when by it thou art hindered from some other better work. That is, spend not thy time in thinking what such a man doth and to what end, what he saith and what he thinks, and what he is about, and such other things or curiosities, which make a man to rove and wander from the care and observation of that part of himself which is rational and overruling. See therefore in the whole series and connection of thy thoughts, that thou be careful to prevent whatsoever is idle and impertinent, but especially whatsoever is curious and malicious. And thou must use thyself to think only of such things, of which if a man upon a sudden should ask thee, what it is that thou art now thinking, thou mayest answer this and that, freely and boldly, that so by thy thoughts it may presently appear that in all thee is sincere and peaceable, as becometh one that is made for society, and regards not pleasures, nor gives way to any voluptuous imaginations at all, free from all contentiousness, envy, and suspicion, and from whatsoever else thou wouldst blush to confess thy thoughts were set upon. He that is such, is he surely that doth not put off to lay hold on that which is best indeed, a very priest and minister of the gods, well acquainted and in good correspondence with him especially, that is seated and placed within himself as in a temple and sacrary, to whom also he keeps and preserves himself unspotted by pleasure, undaunted by pain, free from any manner of wrong or contumely, by himself offered unto himself, not capable of any evil from others, a wrestler of the best sort and for the highest prize, that he may not be cast down by any passion or affection of his own, deeply dyed and drenched in righteousness, embracing and accepting with his whole heart whatsoever either happeneth or is allotted unto him, one who not often, nor without some great necessity tending to some public good, mindeth what any other either speaks or doth or purposeth, for those things only that are in his own power, or that are truly his own, are the objects of his employments, and his thoughts are ever taken up with those things, which of the whole universe are by the fates or providence destinated and appropriated unto himself. Those things that are his own and in his own power he himself takes order, for that they be good, and as for those that happen unto him, he believes them to be so, for that lot and portion which is assigned to everyone, as it is unavoidable and necessary, so is it always profitable. He remembers besides that whatsoever partakes of reason is akin unto him, and that to care for all men generally is agreeing to the nature of a man. But as for honor and praise, that they ought not generally to be admitted and accepted of from all, but from such only who live according to nature. As for them that do not, what manner of men they may be at home or abroad, day or night, how conditioned themselves with what manner of conditions, or with men of what conditions they moil and pass away the time together, he knoweth, and remembers right well. He therefore regards not such praise and approbation as proceeding from them who cannot like and approve themselves. 5. Do nothing against thy will, nor contrary to the community, nor without due examination, nor with reluctancy. Affect not to set out thy thoughts with curious neat language. Be neither a great talker, nor a great under-talker. Moreover, let thy God that is in thee to rule over thee find by thee that he hath to do with a man, an aged man, a sociable man, a Roman, a prince, one that hath ordered his life, as one that expecteth, as it were, nothing but the sound of the trumpet, sounding a retreat to depart out of this life with all expedition, one who for his word or actions neither needs an oath nor any man to be a witness. 6. To be cheerful, and to stand in no need either of men's help or attendance, or of that rest and tranquillity which thou must be beholding to others for, rather like one that is straight of himself, or hath been ever straight, than one that hath been rectified. 7. If thou shalt find anything in this mortal life better than righteousness, than truth, temperance, fortitude, and in general better than a mind contented both with those things which according to right and reason she doth, and in those which without her will and knowledge happen unto thee by the providence, if I say thou canst find out anything better than this, apply thyself unto it with thy whole heart, and that which is best wheresoever thou dost find it, enjoy freely. But if nothing thou shalt find worthy to be preferred to that spirit which is within thee, if nothing better than to subject unto thee thine own lusts and desires, and not to give way to any fancies or imaginations before thou hast duly considered of them, nothing better than to withdraw thyself, to use Socrates his words, from all sensuality, and submit thyself unto the gods, and to have care of all men in general. If thou shalt find that all other things in comparison of this are but vile and of little moment, then give not way to any other thing, which being once thou but affected and inclined unto, it will no more be in thy power without all distraction, as thou oughtest to prefer and to pursue after that good, which is thine own and thy proper good. For it is not lawful that anything that is of another and inferior kind and nature, be it what it will, as either popular applause, or honor, or riches, or pleasures, should be suffered to confront and contest, as it were, with that which is rational and operatively good. For all these things, if once though but for a while they begin to please, they presently prevail and pervert a man's mind, or turn a man from the right way. Do thou therefore, I say, absolutely and freely make choice of that which is best, and stick unto it. Now that they say is best, which is most profitable, if they mean profitable to man as he is a rational man, stand thou to it, and maintain it. But if they mean profitable as he is a creature, only reject it, and from this thy tenet and conclusion keep off carefully all plausible shows and colors of external appearance, that thou mayest be able to discern things rightly. 8. Never esteem of anything as profitable, which shall ever constrain thee either to break thy faith or to lose thy modesty, to hate any man, to suspect, to curse, to dissemble, to lust after anything that requireth the secret of walls or veils. But he that preferreth before all things his rational part and spirit, and the sacred mysteries of virtue which issueth from it, he shall never lament and exclaim, never sigh. He shall never want either solitude or company, and which is chiefest of all, he shall live without either desire or fear. And as for life, whether for a long or short time, he shall enjoy his soul thus compassed about with a body. He is altogether indifferent. For if even now he were to depart, he is as ready for it as for any other action which may be performed with modesty and decency. For all his long life this is his only care, that his mind may always be occupied in such intentions and objects as are proper to a rational, sociable creature. 9. In the mind that is once truly disciplined and purged, thou canst not find anything either foul or impure, or as it were festered, nothing that is either servile or affected, no partial tie, no malicious averseness, nothing obnoxious, nothing concealed. The life of such a one, death can never surprise as imperfect, as of an actor that should die before he had ended, or the play itself were at an end, a man might speak. 10. Use thine opinative faculty with all honor and respect, for in her indeed is all. That thy opinion do not beget in thy understanding anything contrary to either nature or the proper constitution of a rational creature. The end and object of a rational constitution is to do nothing rashly, to be kindly affected towards men, and in all things willingly to submit unto the gods. Casting therefore all other things aside, keep thyself to these few, and remember withal that no man properly can be said to live more than that which is now present, which is but a moment of time. Whatsoever is besides either is already past or uncertain. The time therefore that any man doth live is but a little, and the place where he liveth is but a very little corner of the earth, and the greatest fame that can remain of a man after his death, even that is but little, and that too such as it is whilst it is by the succession of silly mortal men preserved, who likewise shall shortly die, and even while they live know not what in very deed they themselves are, and much less can know one who long before is dead and gone. 11. To these ever-present helps and mementos let one more be added, ever to make a particular description and delineation, as it were, of every object that presents itself to thy mind, that thou mayest wholly and thoroughly contemplate it, in its own proper nature, bare and naked, wholly and severally, divided into its several parts and quarters, and then by thyself in thy mind to call both it and those things of which it doth consist, and in which it shall be resolved, by their own proper true names and appellations. For there is nothing so effectual to beget true magnanimity as to be able truly and methodically to examine and consider all things that happen in this life, and so to penetrate into their natures, that at the same time this also may concur in our apprehensions. What is the true use of it? And what is the true nature of this universe to which it is useful? How much in regard of the universe may it be esteemed? How much in regard of man, a citizen of the supreme city, of which all other cities in the world are as it were but houses and families? 12. What is this that now my fancy is set upon? Of what things doth it consist? How long can it last? Which of all the virtues is the proper virtue for this present use, as whether meekness, fortitude, truth, faith, sincerity, contentation, or any of the rest? Of everything therefore thou must use thyself to say, this immediately comes from God, that by that fatal connection and concatenation of things, or, which almost comes to one, by some coincidental causality. And as for this, it proceeds from my neighbor, my kinsman, my fellow, through his ignorance indeed, because he knows not what is truly natural unto him. But I know it, and therefore carry myself towards him according to the natural law of fellowship, that is, kindly and justly. As for those things that of themselves are altogether indifferent, as in my best judgment I conceive everything to deserve more or less, so I carry myself towards it. 13. If thou shalt intend that which is present, following the rule of right and reason carefully, solidly, meekly, and shalt not intermix any other businesses, but shalt study this only to preserve thy spirit unpolluted and pure, and shall cleave unto him without either hope or fear of anything, in all things that thou shalt either do or speak, contenting thyself with heroical truth, thou shalt live happily, and from this there is no man that can hinder thee. 14. As physicians and surgeons have always their instruments ready at hand for all sudden cures, so have thou always thy dogmata in a readiness for the knowledge of things both divine and human, and whatsoever thou dost, even in the smallest things that thou dost, thou must ever remember that mutual relation and connection that is between these two things divine and things human, for without relation unto God, thou shalt never speed in any worldly action, nor on the other side in any divine, without some respect had to things human. 15. Be not deceived, for thou shalt never live to read thy moral commentaries, nor the acts of the famous Romans and Grecians, nor those excerpta from several books, all which thou hadst provided and laid up for thyself against thine old age. Hasten therefore to an end, and giving over all vain hopes, help thyself in time, if thou carest for thyself, as thou oughtst to do. 16. To steal, to sow, to buy, to be at rest, to see what is to be done, which is not seen by the eyes but by another kind of sight. What these words mean, and how many ways to be understood, they do not understand. The body, the soul, the understanding, as the senses naturally belong to the body, and the desires and affections to the soul, so do the dogmata to the understanding. 17. To be capable of fancies and imaginations is common to man and beast. To be violently drawn and moved by the lusts and desires of the soul is proper to wild beasts and monsters, such as Phalaris and Nero were. To follow reason for ordinary duties and actions is common to them also, who believe not that there be any gods, and for their advantage would make no conscience to betray their own country, and who, when once the doors be shut upon them, dare do anything. If therefore all things else be common to these likewise, it follows that for a man to like and embrace all things that happen and are destinated unto him, and not to trouble and molest that spirit which is seated in the temple of his own breast, with a multitude of vain fancies and imaginations, but to keep him propitious and to obey him as a god, never either speaking anything contrary to truth or doing anything contrary to justice, is the only true property of a good man. And such a one, though no man should believe that he liveth as he doth, either sincerely or conscionably, or cheerful and contentedly, yet is he neither with any man at all angry for it, nor diverted by it from the way that leadeth to the end of his life, through which a man must pass pure, ever ready to depart, and willing of himself, without any compulsion, to fit and accommodate himself to his proper lot and portion. And with that, we've reached the end of Book 3 and this evening's readings from Meditations by the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius. There were quite a lot of ideas in that. I'm going to have to read that again. If you'd like to read this work for yourself, you'll find a link to a free ebook version in the show notes. If you'd like to connect or suggest a boring book you'd like to hear read, the best place to catch me is on Twitter at BoringBooksPod. I'd love to hear from you. I'm so glad you could join me this evening. Until our next boring book, good night.